Hello, everybody, and welcome to today's panel discussion titled You've Upgraded Your ERP, What Next? My name is Mark Diltz. I'm Director of Channel Partnerships here at Gappify, and I'll be your moderator for today. Today, we'll hear from a panel of accounting and operations experts. They'll share practical and actionable tips for strengthening your accounting operations. Here to briefly introduce our panelists, we have two members of SOA Projects on the call. SOA Projects is a leading professional services advisory firm providing a full suite of solutions for technical accounting, IPO, SOX, internal audit, risk management, process transformation, and automation services. So from the SOA side, we have Neil Chua, formerly the Director of Enterprise Systems Risk and Controls for SAP and Workday at PwC, and now ERP Advisory Services Practice Lead at SOA, and Tony Gallegos, NetSuite Advisory Manager at SOA. Thanks you guys for joining us. And we also, from our Gappify side, have Jotham Tai, former corporate accountant and now founder and CEO of Gappify, a leading provider of accrual automation solutions for corporate accountants. So before we dive into the topics here, just some housekeeping items. Everyone will be placed on mute. So if you do have any questions, please use the Q&A function to ask any of those questions. And we're setting aside some time at the end to address those. So do want to cover them in the last 10 minutes or so. And we are recording this webinar, and so we will send the recording out to everybody on Friday. Cool. And so now let's begin today's discussion with our first question. Neil, I'll start with you for this question. I think you'd be a great place to start here. So when you think about the life cycle of a company, over almost every organization will start out with a basic bookkeeping system like Quickbooks. But as those companies grow and scale, of course, they eventually need to graduate into a more sophisticated ERP system, most commonly NetSuite. So Neil, why do your clients typically move out of a bookkeeping application and into a system like NetSuite?
Sure. I can think of a variety of reasons why an organization would move from a bookkeeping system, and emphasize on bookkeeping, right? Because you're not really managing more than your financials in the bookkeeping application. A true ERP would manage your entire backend operation in one application centrally, right? So one of the main reasons, one of the main reasons moving from a Quickbooks, for example, to a NetSuite is consolidation, right? Your entities are going to be consolidated in one application. Real-time financials, right? That's what your CFO or your management wants. In the true Quickbooks architecture, if you say you have 5 different entities, you can have 5 different QuickBook instances, and on a monthly basis go through a heavy manual process consolidating into another QuickBook instance. Where if you have a true ERP, it's all centralized in one application, right? Revenue, spend, real-time financials, right? A few other things I can think about. A lot of companies that are pre-IPO that want to start thinking about going IPO, they want to streamline, standardize their process, automate their process, right? A lot of these applications offer best practice, saying, hey, rather than building your processes, utilize the best practice and build on top of that, right? You implement the NetSuite, it comes pre-delivered, you utilize their processes, utilize the automation, such things as approval processes, right? For just, simple thing as purchase orders. A unsophisticated process would require you to manage this all by email, via Dropbox, right? Communication, or even manage your spend based on PO on a spreadsheet, tracking a PO to your invoices, right? So now they want to have that centralized in the system. Now moving on to IPO, want to go IPO, want to adhere to SOX controls, that will all be now in your system. As someone approves your journal entry, it's now centralized in the system rather than you searching for it by email. As I mentioned earlier, right, your controls will be automated. It's always good to have more of a preventative control, right? Enforces that standardized process management is actually instilling and monitoring that versus doing what we call detective control and monitoring all the transactions on a monthly basis and backpedaling and making those corrections manually, right? Real-time reporting, as I mentioned, management wants to have real-time reporting, even down to your revenue waterfall report will be generated out of NetSuite real-time. And mainly, we've also seen other companies that swap out an ERP towards another ERP. Mainly, they might be lacking the functionality, right? One ERP might not have the global capabilities of being able to manage operations, should say multi-currency functionality, or even multi-book, where you're managing different regulatory requirements for each of your entities internationally. Mm-hmm. Or, lastly, maybe functionality, right? The ecosystem that the ERP that you have now doesn't have the capabilities of managing expenses, right, in a more nicely packaged fashion. And sorry, one last thought. I just remembered, one of our clients specifically wanted to move out of an on-prem solution, managing your own hardware, your own network, your own team to manage that, to a cloud-based solution where it's always available and less downtime. One of our clients lost their system, went offline for a whole week. So imagine their accounting was shut down for a whole week, right? So very detrimental to your operations.
Perfect. That actually leads right into our next question, because you kind of talked about a situation where it became like mission critical for you to implement an ERP system. But Tony, curious to hear your thoughts on this. What other signals would folks look for within a business for them to know when it's the right time to upgrade and implement a true ERP system?
Yeah, well, that's a great question. It's hard to say because businesses approach this ERP decision in several reasons, right? With several reasons. A lot of them are, what we see is a lot of times the accounting management doesn't have the efficient reporting capability to get their financials in a timely manner. And they need to be able to consolidate some of these numbers quickly to be able to make those business decisions. That is one of the reasons that a lot of companies will move to grow and implement a new ERP system. In other cases, we've seen where the companies are growing, right? Maybe their footprint and their market share is increasing. They're looking to purchase additional legal entities throughout either the US or throughout the world in multiple currencies, and they can't do it on a Quickbooks per se, right? And so they're looking to be able to expand that footprint, so they're able to consolidate those numbers into the US currency or into and consolidate those legal entities. One of the things we run into a lot is we have companies that are looking to the future. They're seeing their growth, they're seeing their footprint, they're seeing their market share increase. They're seeing that they can't report quickly enough, and now they're preparing maybe in a couple of years to do an IPO. And so they need a system that's going to give them the ability to consolidate quickly, like I said, and report, and those requirements that you're going to have that maybe their accounting system or their ERP system doesn't give them. And so in preparation for those IPO requirements, they're ahead of the curve there, and they're seeing and preparing for that. And so the decision to bring a integrated system that's going to give them what they need in preparation for an IPO is one of the things we see quite a bit today in this market. There's also another reason that NetSuite, I think, is very competitive, I should say, with other ERP systems, and it was the first with cloud-based solution. And so you're in the old days, I don't know if you guys are younger than me, but in the old days, we used to have a server in the building somewhere where all our data was kept. And if that server went down, and I believe there's still some companies that run like this, then you were out of business, or you got hacked. Well, now with cloud solutions like NetSuite, they're looking to that. They're looking to say, you know what, we have a global footprint. We need to have the ability to get to our data quickly, and we need security. So we need to be able to move to an ERP system that's going to give us a comfort, right? That we can, that we know that our data is safe and that is secure. The other thing that a lot of companies are looking to do is to be able to access their data through several devices, right? In the old days, you used to have a computer, you had to be in the office. Well, now with cloud-based systems, ERP systems, you don't need that. You can be anywhere in the world and still be able to transact and get to your data and make those decisions. So you're never really too far from that. And that's a lot of reasons why companies feel like, hey, we need to have that instant access. We need to report on it timely. We need to be able to add our entities. We need to be able to get to our data and manage our business processes through one integrated system. And then finally, the last point I'll make is that a lot of companies that are coming, that are consolidating, if you will, to an ERP, may have legal entities, but they're all running separate systems. And now they don't really have control in the way they process or in the way they consolidate their numbers, right? So now they're looking to consolidate all that into one integrated system and implement controls over those systems. So managing those controls is a big thing that companies need to have, particularly if you're going to go to IPO in a couple of years, right? So that's another big reason why companies look to get into a system that's going to allow them to enter to, to make approvals on purchases, to make approvals on payments of vendor bills, to review controls over margins on orders, right? You want to make sure that you're selling your product and you can control the margins so that your salespeople are selling at the right margins, right? And that you're able to track. And then finally, maybe your revenue management, as far as being able to report that in accordance with your accounting practices, so that you're able to generate revenue reports and what have you, and control those, right? So you're able to control from the beginning, from the request all the way through what you're reporting at the end of your accounting cycle. So those are a few of the reasons. And like I said at the beginning, every company is different, and they come in. They may not have all these needs, but they certainly have a few of these, and they need to be able to implement them through an integrated system. And that's why they would go to something like NetSuite or something that's cloud-based.
Tony, if I can comment on that, and also circling back to Neil's points. First of all, I am old enough to go back to those on-prem days. I have been around JDE, PeopleSoft, the black screens, and so
Classics.
on.
Yeah.
And to your point there, like going cloud is actually pretty critical. I know we take it for granted. A lot of us companies here in the Silicon Valley, we're used to cloud everything, but the reality is there are a lot of industries that are still on-prem, right? So that conversion from on-prem to cloud is an important one because you don't have to deal with data centers or servers and so on. I also want to click back on what Neil and what you also touched on, Tony, which is what I've seen in my past is the biggest driver to upgrading your ERP is consolidation, right? Having to bring in multiple entities and being able to get consolidated P&L and balance sheets. So definitely I see that as really to me one of the key drivers for a Quickbooks NetSuite conversion. But I wanted to get your feedback too, and Neil and Tony, either one of you can answer this question. What I also am hearing on the ground is NetSuite is kind of a great hub for other best of breed solutions that you can easily bolt on, right? So people, in other words, are going to NetSuite because it opens up a new world of other solutions that they can integrate with. And I know we're going to touch on some of those areas like order to cash and P2P, but just to throw the question back at you guys, is that also what you're hearing from your clients? Like, I want to get into NetSuite because it opens up that whole new world for us.
Yeah, definitely the ecosystem, as I mentioned earlier, is very key, right? Because the age of let's centralize everything to one ERP, utilize the ERP, and that's it without using third-party solutions is gone, right? You want to use best of breed, right? There are use cases of why these third-party applications do exist, because they elevate the ease of use, right? For say your team on the ground, your sales team out there, right? You want to make it easy for them to enter sales, right? Generate opportunities, generate sales orders, or even enter their time and expense, right? NetSuite has a lot of that from a platform perspective, but there's other applications out there, let's say Expensify, that makes it easier for you to enter your expenses, right? So they buy in not just for that, but their ecosystem. You know, I mean, those of you that know me, I use a lot of car analogies. So here's one coming, right? You buy a car, the standard, but then what you want to have after you buy the car is added on functionality, say a better sound system, right? A better radio, maybe even a backup camera, right? So you want to see what, you know, how many of those are compatible. Even if you look at the ecosystem between Google and Apple, right? You look to see what's going to be my smart home, what's that going to look like based on the third-party applications that are bolted on to that main ERP application.
Great stuff. Yeah, you know, kind of talking to, you know, the fact that once you implement NetSuite, right, that's in many cases, that's kind of where the work starts, right? It's kind of, that's just the general framework for building a scalable process, but then there's so many other activities that a business can partake in to optimize the use of that system and improve their internal business processes. And yeah, maybe to go to you on this, Tony, to start at least, you know, building off this point, as most ERP implementations will not encompass a complete end-to-end long-term automated process, at least as part of the phase one of implementation. Do you have a few examples that you've seen in your work of like an ideal completed streamlined solution and just what that looks like for companies?
Yeah, sure. So like Neil was pointing out earlier that once that, you know, we've implemented NetSuite, there's always some fine tuning that happens on after the implementation is complete. We usually find there's a period between at the end of, you know, the go live. Let's say we hit the go live. There is a period where there is a the graph for the users getting used to moving around in the application goes up, right? Because now they're having to transact in the system. Once we get past that, then we move into a phase where they start looking at solution providers. Maybe they want to get an ROI on how they're going to pay their vendor bills, and they want to be able to integrate systems into their existing processes. And they either will come to us and they'll approach us and they'll say, hey, we're looking to do, we're looking at these, can you give us a recommendation, right? That's one of the things we get a lot. Can you recommend to us a particular solution that, you know, will give us X, Y, and here's the reason why we need it. So we're able to consult with them and get that information and bring to bear based on the information and knowledge we have, having experience with working with third-party solutions. We will either do an analysis of, you know, what their needs are. We'll go in and do an analysis, being that we know their business, so we're an easy partner, and we can kind of look at their requirements that we've gathered before and look at their new requirements and recommend and bring a partner that we have worked with before into their environment to give them the ROI that they're looking for. So additional things they're looking for are, you know, like maybe additional functionality, maybe within NetSuite, where they want, maybe now they want revenue management, maybe they want to do multi-book, they have requirements where you may have reporting. Now they have, you know, they're bringing an entity from China, and they have different reporting requirements that they need to extract out of NetSuite. So customization of reports is a phase that we go into. Searches within the system so that they're able to extract the analytics that they need, and then finally any FP&A solutions for budgeting and for analytics of the financial data. And then the big one really is we hear a lot is the accruals automation. As we get closer to month end, the accruals become important. We want to make sure that they're reported accurately so the financials and management can get a comfortable feeling that, hey, you know what, we know we have these liabilities, current liabilities out there we need to address. And so that has been, in those areas is where we see what we call a second phase, where we move after the implementation into a phase now where we're integrating systems like maybe Salesforce on the sales side for recording of opportunities and contacts and nurturing those opportunities. And then additionally, we have some homegrown applications. We've run into that where we have companies that would like us to integrate their current, maybe they have their own web or their own order system they need to integrate. even MRPs or 3PLs. Now they've got their inventory in NetSuite, but now, we want to automate the ability to receive, to fulfill. And so we need to, we're looking at this system. Maybe we've got handhelds now, and we want to be able to integrate into NetSuite. Can you guys help us with this? So it goes into a different phase, right? It's the phase after the implementation, and that's where we bring to bear and assist and consult with our clients to, again, bring third-party solutions that are going to give them what they need and bring to bear, their ROI that they're looking to get out of those solutions.
That's great stuff. Yeah, and
Yeah.
touched on a lot of awesome points just in how companies optimize the use of NetSuite to improve the functionality of their business.
Yeah.
One thing that we see with a lot of our customers, particularly around the procure to pay process and utilizing different functions, to streamline that in NetSuite. Neil, would be curious to hear your thoughts on how you see a completed ideal solution related to procure to pay.
Sure, no problem. Just to add on to what Tony mentioned, after an initial go live, right, we preach the whole crawl, walk, run methodology, right? Typically, as Tony mentioned, you want to put in the foundation, right? Once your users are used to the application, they're going to want more, right? May it be analytics, additional functionality, enhancements, and automation, right? So as part of what we call phase one, the crawl phase, right? You'll have the foundation transactional, and then that's when your users start saying, hey, this is too manual. Seems redundant. How can I automate this? Right. So ideal situations, for example, for procure to pay, if you want to streamline the process long term and eliminate manual keystrokes and further utilizing your ROI on the application, we've seen such things as, for example, we have clients where there's a lot of vendors that are constantly onboarding on a monthly basis, right? Let's say about 20 or even up to 100 vendors on a monthly basis. So they can use a vendor onboarding platform so that your vendors, put in all the required information along with W-9s. Once that's approved and onboarded, now it's free for your users or your employees now to go into the system. What we like to see, what we've seen other companies do from a self-service perspective at this point, once the vendors are onboarded, is now your users can freely go into NetSuite, right? Put a request in, say, I need 10 laptops for this particular project I'm spearheading, right? It goes to an automated workflow to the supervisor, right? Get approved. Once that's approved, it sources to the buyer, right? Again, this is all on the system centrally, right? There's no exchanges emails at this point. Goes to the buyer. The buyer now generates a PO towards the vendor where they've established certain pricing arrangements, right? The best vendor, best deal, right? Or best turnaround, right? Best specs. So buyer processes that, right? And it spits out the PO to another approval chain, right? Maybe within the organization, say R&D, within a product department. It'll go up to the VP, for example, or ELT, your executive leadership, if it hits $1 million of a spend, right? Once the PO is approved, it spits out automatically from the application or ERP to the person that requested for the purchase, as well as directly to the vendor saying, here's your PO, please fulfill, right? Now, once that PO is generated to the vendor is going to start shipping and then start invoicing into the company, right? Now we have capabilities, what you call OCR, optical character recognition, that intakes the vendor bill, right? Pre-populates the vendor bill in NetSuite. Then from there, AP, the only thing they need to do, again, less keystrokes, right? AP will not just have to vouch, probably match it to a PO, and then from there, it'll kick it to whoever the approver is, right? In our certain best practice scenarios, it goes to whoever requested the PO, who's going to be approving the vendor bill, right? There's other situations where there's no PO related, and it'll route it to, say, accounting. In unique situations, rent, utilities, where there is no PO. From there, once the PO, as a vendor bill is matched to the PO, it does, again, audit from a control perspective, matches it to make sure that you haven't exceeded your approved PO limit. That's how you manage budgets and spend. And then once that's approved, the vendor bill, it goes for preparation for payment. AP goes in and then routes it to the bank for approval, or sorry, for payment. And then the CFO or controller goes into the bank portal based on cash flow, pays the bills that are ready for payment. So if you notice, when I describe that whole process, there's not many keystrokes along that way because you're utilizing a system to work for you, right?
Absolutely. Taking out the, sorry, go ahead, Jotham.
I was just going to quickly kind of try to tie a nice bow around the points there. And these are really great recommendations, Tony and Neil. And just to kind of weigh into what I've seen is like really nirvana state on OTC and P2P on order to cash specifically, especially companies that are, SaaS based and do B2B selling, connecting that with Salesforce and just seeing everything flow through from a close one, an SFDC, to a sales order, and how that then tees up the billing capabilities of NetSuite and all the way down to the cash applications. It is very pretty to look at when you see that integration really nicely flowing through. And Neil, to your point about P2P, same concept, right? So you have these front-end systems, there are vendor portals. We also have a product on the vendor management side that can help onboard vendors. But that starting point and how it flows through your ERP all the way to payments, when that is really tight, it is obviously like efficient for the accounting team to operate, but just, from a system geek's perspective, really beautiful to look at. Yeah, so really great points there.
Yeah, you're managing spend, right, through a PO process and approval process. So you're managing expenses. On the other hand, like you said, you're managing revenue stream, right? So you imagine sales are flowing in. One thing that you want to highlight there is also revenue recognition is a very big thing for SaaS companies, especially when there's multiple elements that you're talking about, right? Whether it be the subscription, hardware, warranties, pricing arrangements. If you have an engine that automatically calculates that, imagine how much time from a spreadsheet perspective, right? You have how much you're making on the monthly basis and how much you're spending on a monthly basis, easy tie up, and then you know what your profit is per month.
Yeah, it's great stuff. Sorry, go ahead, Tony. We'd love to hear your thoughts too.
On NetSuite, you can run it daily. NetSuite's smart enough; it'll run your financial on a daily basis. You don't have to close your books. It's smart enough to tell you, hey, this is your revenue, this is your margin today. So it is to Neil's point, you can capture it pretty quickly.
Great. Yeah, and Jotham, would love to get back to you on this point because we talked a lot about like what's the nirvana state for P2P, order to cash. Particularly, Jotham, given your expertise in accounting, many close cycles you've led and whatnot, and time as a consultant, how do you view, an optimized, streamlined process around record to report?
Yeah, and that one naturally happens at the back end of kind of the whole transaction stream in organizations, but really key, right? Because you've now invested in your ERP like a NetSuite. You're trying to figure out what your purpose is, and you're trying to put together tools to support that purpose. And financial reporting is it, right, guys? We talked about consolidation earlier. We want real-time reporting. Record to report is a key cycle to really activating that. And so obviously we have an accrual product, which is an important part of the close process. You want your expenses to be complete in your P&L. So bolting on solutions like ours is very helpful. And then as far as close management, we got to do all this work in a short period of time. So having solutions like a Flowcaster or Blackline to give you a command center for close items that need to be completed for month end is crucial. Obviously, NetSuite has some native capabilities as well in terms of just hard closing books. I love the consolidation feature there. And also as an FX nerd, I'm a FAS 52 guy. So to know that you can get FX rates and have CTA properly calculated is pretty amazing to do on all in one system. Because what you want to do, and I can speak to this now as someone who consumes financial statements as an executive of the company. I want financial statements within a week or two of closing the books. I'm trying to get it down to a week. But the only way to get there is just to have a strong ERP. So we wanted to do this webinar because you now have an ERP. like what do you do next to get and enable the reports that you want on a real-time basis. And so I love the ideas here, both on the P2P and the OTC side. But I think one of the biggest activators for real-time financial reports is looking into and investing in record-to-report solutions. And a lot of times it gets overlooked because the Coupas, the Paltis, Bill.coms, and all these other front-end solutions get all the attention. But please do, if you're listening here in the audience, think about making investments in record-to-report.
Yeah.
Great stuff. Yeah, anything you wanted to add there, Tony, just from your perspective on how you help companies on the record-to-report side?
Well, no, I think Jotham explained it beautifully. Having been a controller, when I was a controller, it was trying to make business decisions quickly. And if you had in those days, you had system, everybody ran their own system, and it was difficult. I mean, you might close 20, 30 days later after the month was over. That was not acceptable. When I was a controller, the interest rates were pretty high, and if your company was getting loans to run their business, you weren't making good decisions because the rates were changing so fast. Well, with NetSuite, the ERP system is so dynamic that, like I said, you'll know your position on a daily basis. You're able to know, put your finger on the pulse of your business and be able to control. It gives you, to use Neil's analogy about automobiles, it gives you the ability to self-drive it almost like a Tesla would, if you would. So the other beauty of the recorder report is that NetSuite also is doing a lot to give you and give you more tools by upgrades. They're doing the upgrades that they give you twice a year. Typically, when I see them and read through the upgrade notes, there are a lot on the recorder report where they're trying to make sure that the accountants have the tools they need to make those decisions at closing or shortly right after closing. Certainly their closing process, their month-end process is very, very seamless. You can close by subsidiary, you can close an individual subsidiary, or you can close total for the whole company at one time. So you're able to coordinate between your legal entities and set a timetable as to when they have their books complete so they can consolidate. They also have built-in work flows that you can generate to control your journals that go into your accruals, right? That go into your, Neil mentioned revenue recognition. You can review those and then before they hit the general ledger and be able to control your reporting, your financial reporting, so that you're able to make those decisions quickly and approve or not, or reject them as you would. So you're able to gain efficiency on the closing process. It really gives you a large amount of flexibility, but more than that, like I said, with the ability to you'll know your financial position almost daily is a very powerful thing to have, so that even before you get to close, you can prepare to make sure your accruals are in line and make sure that your AP and your order to cash your margins are in line, so that so it makes the closing so much easier, and then of course the controls just add to that.
Awesome, great stuff, and really interesting perspective from everybody. We could probably talk about this all day, but I do want to save some time for some questions from the audience here. So one in particular came up that I thought was pretty interesting here. The question is, once you have implemented your ERP system, like a NetSuite, what are the first steps that businesses should take to get the most out of their new system? And I guess I'll leave this open to whoever wants to take it.
I think what happens after the implementation, right, based on our experience, the first 2 months is mainly getting adopted and comfortable with the system. Once you're comfortable with the system and you're trying to, in a sense, figure things out, how to navigate to the application, transacting, analytics. The next step is really assessing what else can we streamline as part of our transactions, right? What are we doing too manual, right? What else can we improve on, right? And then from there, building a roadmap, right? In terms of what additional functionalities we need, what other functionalities do we have to enhance, and what analytics do we want to churn now that we have all the transactions and data in this application?
Yeah, I wanted to add to that. I think the first, Neil made some excellent points. What I see also is getting to the first closing. It's like now we're on the new system. We're going to our first closing. We want to get there, and we want to make sure. And to add to Neil's point, it's learning how to transact in the system so that we can close on our first month, right? And so, just so you guys know, at SOA, we don't just leave our clients on their own. We're hand in hand. We learn their business. We walk them through the closing. We're with them through the closing process so that we get them through that first hump. And then after that's done, then the second closing gets a little easier. And then to Neil's point, then they start looking at, okay, now we're past what we need to have, right? Now let's move on to how we're gonna make this a better system and what we need to bring in to make it, to additional third-party software.
Tony and Neil, as you were sharing your responses there, it kind of brought to mind, and this is totally accountant practical nature in me. I have been part of these implementations before you go live. Would say a NetSuite, Mr. or Miss CFO says, okay, Jotham, we invested all this money, got you to a go live, now close the books faster.
Yeah.
And then all of a sudden you find yourself really busy with closing the books and other activities with no time whatsoever to invest in the next step. So, yeah, and not only advise this because you folks are on this webinar with us, but I do think having partners that you can leverage outside of your existing accounting team will help drive the timeline for the next investments to make. And yeah, I'm always about like making sure there's a resource plan to do any kind of initiative. So I think my answer to your question, Mark, would be, what's your resource plan to help you activate the next levels of investments after you've implemented your ERP?
To add to that, have a true trusted advisor, right? So you get busy with work after implementation, right? At that point, you need a partner to remind you, hey, here's based on the queue of requests and issues that you're having, Jotham, right, CFO, let's talk about next steps, right? Here's other things that you can avail of, right? Unless you know what the system's capable of, you're not going to be aware of how else to leverage your application to its full capacity.
I don't like this expression, but I think it's very relevant here. You don't know what you don't know.
Yes,
so that's
exactly.
why having a trusted partner is critical.
Yep.
Absolutely, particularly in the early days, right? You're just kind of getting to know your system and whatnot. Well, I think we have maybe time for one more question here, and I actually think this is a perfect question to kind of wrap it up from a high level. So I'd love to hear from all you guys on this. But broadly speaking, what are the critical success factors for an ERP or point application implementation?
Let me start off, and maybe you guys feel free to jump in. I think a few success factors should be, understanding that this is a partnership, right? True that you have an SI come in, right? The partnership will entail, obviously, us obtaining the requirements from the customer, right? At the same time, having a true partner is a partner that will question some of those processes to instill either best practice, right? Or to have your back when it comes to, hey, you're bypassing, or you can leverage these certain automations for control purposes, right? And all throughout the life cycle of the implementation, that constant feed or discussion is important, as well as making sure that the implementation team gets the data that they need to set up your system, as well as time from the customer to actually test the application, so that once we're live, they're both comfortable, right? And make sure that the requirements are met, right? We don't foresee, just releasing a system without proper testing, because your business more than we do, right? Second is maybe identifying a partner that not only is a technical, team, but also someone that knows best practice, business processes, accounting, controls, and maybe have a bench to reach out to whenever you need some local regulatory requirements, right? Maybe your FCPA, your ASC 606, leasing requirements, right? So that it makes a well thought out implementation long-term, right? Those are a few things I can think about. We'll leave it kind of open to you guys, Jotham, Tony.
I was going to add one thing is, excuse me, is knowing the time investment beforehand. A lot of times, that's one. Two is making sure that the right people are in the meetings when we're gathering the requirements. We don't want to run into a situation where we're already configuring the system and going through some of the demonstration of the processes, and we'll get a person in the meeting that goes, "Hey, you know what? I wasn't part of this requirement gathering, and why are we doing it like this?" So, the key to success is getting the right people to the meetings when we're doing the exploratory work. Second is know the time investment that it's going to take. Accountants, CFOs, they have a full-time job, and along with that, they're going to have to make a little more time for getting those requirements we sent, like getting your vendors, your customers, all the listings we need, your chart of accounts, going through all the approvals, if we're bringing data, that they reconcile the data. So sometimes we get clients that come in, they're just not aware of how much time it's going to take to get a system up and running. So time investment, along with what Neil said, time investment, getting the right people on the right meetings, so that when we're actually testing the cases, we're capturing everything all the requirements they have. Yeah.
Yeah, and for me, the critical success factor in implementing an ERP is really being hyper-focused on the objectives, right? So you go into an ERP knowing why you made that investment and being hyper-focused on those points, whether it be to have the ability to consolidate or to close my books faster, whatever those points are throughout the project, just making sure it's aligning towards meeting those objectives. And maybe a great way to wrap up with consolidation, because it came up so many times. I still have seen, Tony and Neil, companies that have implemented NetSuite, but end up exporting the reports and consolidating offline in Excel. So did you really meet your objectives? No, and the reason why I got to a no is probably some kind of a slip or a gap in the implementation process. So
Right.
if you're implementing an ERP or a point solution after you implement your ERP, you just be very intentional about what the objectives are, making sure that there's strong alignment around that.
Yep.
That's a question I always ask when we're doing the requirements. On day one, what are the reports you must have to run your business? Because they go into the system, they don't know what the reports are, right? And it's important that I know, if we turn it on tomorrow, how do you make decisions and what reports are must have, so that we're able to give you, Jotham, what you just mentioned is what you need to run your business. So.
Great stuff. Well, I think that's the perfect place to wrap up. We timed this perfectly. So thank you so much to our panelists, Jotham, Neil, and Tony. And thank you all for joining.